The diner was small, the kind that smelled of strong coffee, old oil, and forgotten dreams. It was just past 6 a.m. in a quiet corner of General Santos City. The streets were waking up. Delivery trucks passing, tired workers sipping instant coffee, and local vendors setting up shop. Inside that diner, no one paid attention to the hunched elderly woman wiping down tables. Her movements were slow but determined. Her hands, wrinkled and veined, gripped the cloth tightly. Every few minutes she paused to catch her breath, resting on a wooden cane beside her. But she never stopped. She was 85. He was still working. And no one knew that she had once raised a future world champion. Her name was Lola Minda. 3 decades ago, she had been more than just a nanny. She was a second mother to the most iconic boxer in Filipino history, Manny Pacquiao. But now, she worked in silence, clearing crumbs and collecting empty cups. No one recognized her. No one asked questions. Not until that day. A young couple in the back whispered quietly, glancing over their phones. "Isn't that her, the one who raised Pacquiao?" "No way. What would she be doing here?" "I'm serious. Look at this old photo. That's her." They looked again. And in that moment, everything changed. Miles away, in a quiet gym filled with echoes of gloves hitting bags, Manny Pacquiao was finishing his morning workout. Though retired from professional boxing, he still trained like a soldier. Discipline never left him. But today, his heart wasn't in it. He sat in silence, flipping through an old photo album handed to him by one of his team members. His fingers paused over a black and white photo. A small boy in worn-out shorts, leaning against an older woman with a warm smile and fierce eyes. It was her, Lola Minda, a name he hadn't spoken in years, a face he hadn't seen since before the fame, the belts, the lights, the Senate, the crowds. And underneath that photo, in her own handwriting, "Take care of the little warrior, Minda." In the dusty, broken streets of Sarangani province, long before he was a legend, Manny Pacquiao was just a hungry boy with no shoes and too many questions. His father had walked out, his mother worked multiple jobs, his siblings cried often. But one woman never left. Lola Minda, not related by blood, but bonded by sacrifice. She wasn't paid much, and most weeks she wasn't paid at all. But she stayed. She fed him when there was no rice. She covered him with her shawl when the roof leaked. She stood up to older boys who teased him for being poor, and when he cried at night wondering why life was so unfair, she just whispered, "Go of listens, anak, just keep swinging." Many didn't fully understand what she meant back then, but her words stuck. So did her love. Now, as Manny stared at her photo, tears welled up in his eyes. "She used to be everything," he whispered, "and I forgot her." Just then, his assistant walked in, hesitant. "Sir, there's something on social media you need to see." He turned the screen around, and there it was. A blurry photo, an old woman in a diner, cleaning, alone. Her name trending again, but not for the reason it should. Netizens claim 85-year-old diner cleaner is boxing legend's former nanny. Did Pacquiao forget the woman who raised him? Public calls for reunion. She deserves more than this. Manny stood up without a word, his hands shaking slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Find her, now." What would you do if someone who once saved your life was suffering in silence? Let us know in the comments, and if this story touches your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Before the world called him the people's champ, before the lights, the cameras, the belts, and the roar of arenas, he was just a barefoot boy with bruised knees and an empty stomach. His name was Emmanuel, but everyone in the slums of Sarangani just called him Manny. He lived in a small bamboo shack with no electricity, no running water, and a leaky roof that groaned every time it rained. He shared a mat with his siblings and sometimes went days eating nothing but bananas or watered-down rice. His clothes were often too small or too torn. His shoes? He didn't have any. But even in that world of hunger and hopelessness, he had one person who never let go of his hand: Lola Minda. She wasn't his real grandmother. She wasn't even family by blood. But to Manny, she was everything. She came into his life when he was just 5. His mother had begged her to look after the children while she went to work, cleaning other people's homes and doing laundry just to bring home enough for a few kilos of rice. Lola had gray streaks in her hair, a back that ached from decades of work, and a voice that could silence a street full of shouting kids. But her heart was made of something unbreakable. Every morning before dawn, she would cook a small pot of rice and give most of it to the kids. Manny would often wake up to find her placing the last egg on his plate and then sitting down with nothing but coffee. He didn't notice it at first. But one day he asked her, "Lola, why don't you eat?" She smiled, gently tapping his cheek. "I ate earlier, anak." "You finished that. You're growing. I'm already old." But she hadn't eaten. Not that day, not the day before. She just didn't want him to know. She was the first to see something in him. Not his fists, not his speed. His heart. She taught him how to pray. She read him Bible verses when he couldn't sleep. She stitched his clothes by candlelight. When kids in the neighborhood teased him for being poor, she stood at the gate, broom in hand, and dared anyone to come near him again. One day, 2 older boys shoved him into a ditch. He came home covered in mud, crying. Before he could even explain, she pulled him close, wiped his face, and said, "You're not weak. They are. They need to push others to feel strong, but real strength is quiet. Anak. One day, you'll show them what that means." And then she did something he'd never forget. She took his little hand and bought him his first pair of gloves. Not real boxing gloves. They were old, cracked training gloves from a nearby flea market. But to Manny, they were golden. "Punch the air, not people," she told him. "Train your spirit first." He did. Every afternoon, he would shadow box outside their tiny home. No ring, no coach, just a small boy punching the wind while Lola, Minda, clapped and cheered. But life wasn't always so simple. His father didn't understand. He wasn't around much, and when he was, he brought chaos. Harsh words, drunken nights. One time, Manny watched him throw a plate at the wall during an argument with his mother. It shattered near his feet. He ran outside, trembling. Lola followed. She sat beside him on the curb and pulled him close. Sometimes, she whispered, "Fathers forget how to be fathers." "But that doesn't mean you're less of a son." He sobbed into her shoulder. "She'll leave him," he cried, "right?" Lola hesitated, then nodded. "She'll do what's right for you all, you just be strong." And eventually, his mother did. After that, it was just them. Manny, his siblings, his mother, and Lola. She became their protector, their provider, their only shield from the storm of poverty. Manny didn't have toys, he didn't have books, but he had stories. Stories from Lola. She told him about warriors, about David and Goliath, about little men with giant faith. "You don't need to be tall," she said. "You just need to stand." Every time he lost hope, she reminded him of that. One rainy night, he came home drenched, holding a sack of Pandacel he'd tried to sell on the street. No one bought any. He placed the wet bag on the table and burst into tears. "I'm useless," he cried. "I can't help. I'm not good at anything." She looked at him with that fierce look only she had. "Don't you dare say that. Not you. You're a fighter. You were born in the mud, but you're made of fire." He didn't forget that. The next morning, he went back out. And the day after that. And slowly, that fire started to grow. When he was 12, a neighbor saw him shadowboxing and told him about a local trainer. Manny begged Lola to let him go. She was scared. Boxing was dangerous. But she looked at him, small, skinny, eyes burning with something bigger than himself. And she said, "Then go fight Anak, but fight with honor." She sewed his first boxing trunks by hand. She scraped coins together to buy him water and snacks for training. She sat outside the gym, waiting until he was done, sometimes for hours in the heat. And when he won his first amateur match, a local street competition with no money, no prize, she cried, not because he won, because he believed in himself, because he stood. Years later, when he would fight in world arenas with millions watching, he would still remember her, not the crowd, not the belts. Her, sitting in a plastic chair, cheering louder than anyone else, with eyes full of pride. But time went on. He grew up. He moved to Manila. He started winning real matches, then titles. Then the world watched. Fame changed things. Life got faster, busier. Lola never asked for anything. She stayed back home, still working, still praying, still clipping out his magazine articles and gluing them into a notebook. Even as her hands began to shake, even when her eyesight began to fade, she never missed a fight. And she never stopped calling him my boy. But he hadn't seen her in years. Not in person. Not until the photos surfaced. An old woman cleaning tables in a small diner at age 85. And the world asked, did he remember her? The woman who gave up her meals, her sleep, and her years. Wove a web of hidden alliances. If someone ever believed in you before you believed in yourself, tag them in the comments. And if this part touched you, hit like, share it forward, and don't miss. Manny Pacquiao stood in the center of his quiet training room, staring at the photo of Lola Minda, his second mother, now circulating all over the internet. She was 85, still working, still serving others in silence. He felt like the wind had been knocked out of him. He'd promised himself he would never forget the people who lifted him when he was nobody. But time was cruel. The spotlight could be blinding. And somehow, in all the noise of titles, fame, and public life, he had let her fade into the background. Not anymore. He picked up the phone. Drop everything, he told his assistant. Find her. His team scattered like wildfire. Calls were made to the diner. The photo was traced back to a Twitter post. The user, a student visiting from Manila, responded instantly. That's her, the student said. She's there every morning. She never complains, just works, smiles. But she moves slow, like she shouldn't be working anymore. They sent a car immediately. Manny was quiet the whole drive. Memories of her filled his chest, her voice, her hands, her smile when he won his first medal, and now he was about to see her again. Not at a family gathering, not in a happy reunion, but in a uniform, wiping ketchup off tables. As his car pulled up to the diner, people had started to gather outside. Word had spread. Camera phones were ready. A news van had even arrived. But Manny didn't wait for anyone. He stepped out, lowered his cap, and walked in. The bell above the diner door chimed. Lola Minda didn't turn around. She was too focused, cleaning up a spill from a family's table. Her movements were careful, her breathing labored. He stood there for a moment, just watching her. His heart cracked open. He stepped closer. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said gently, his voice shaking. "You missed a spot." She looked up. At first, her eyes didn't register him. Age had blurred her vision. She squinted, paused. Then her hand flew to her mouth. "Manny?" she whispered. He nodded, and suddenly he was no longer the icon, no longer the legend, just the little boy she raised. He rushed to her and fell to his knees. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I forgot. I forgot the one who never forgot me." The entire diner went silent. People cried. Even the cooks stepped out, wiping their faces with aprons. Lola Minda tried to speak, but her voice broke. You remembered?" He nodded. "I should have come sooner. You gave up everything for me, and I let you work alone at this age? No more. Never again." He took her frail hands in his. "You raised a champion. Now let me take care of my hero." They hugged for a long time. The world watched, not with judgment, but with awe. This wasn't a celebrity act. This wasn't staged. This was a son returning to the woman who built his soul. Outside, reporters tried to ask questions. Manny said nothing. He simply guided her into his car. "She's coming home," he said. "She's family." Later that day, a new video surfaced on social media. Manny carrying Lola into a newly renovated home. Doctors checking on her. Chefs cooking her favorite meals. And her smile, oh, that smile. It went viral. Comments flooded in. This is what being a real man looks like. She gave him everything, and he gave it back. Not all heroes wear gloves, some wear aprons. In a press interview weeks later, when asked why he didn't speak out sooner, Manny simply said, "I was busy chasing belts. She never chased anything, just me. I owed her everything." He then announced the creation of the Minda Foundation, supporting elderly caregivers across the Philippines. A tribute, his promise kept, and a reminder That even the strongest fighters need someone who believed in them when they were still swinging at shadows. The ballroom was filled with lights, laughter, and generosity. Manny Pacquiao stood on stage at a charity auction in Manila, surrounded by businessmen, celebrities, and fellow philanthropists. The event had already raised millions for education and housing. Cameras flashed, people cheered. His speech was simple. I was once a street kid with no shoes. I know what it feels like to have nothing. That's why I give back, because someone gave to me first. Applause filled the room. After his speech, he stepped off stage, shaking hands and thanking guests. That's when it happened. A woman, elderly, quiet, approached him. She didn't ask for a photo. She didn't request an autograph. Instead, she handed him something. An old photograph, bent at the edges, faded with time. He took it politely, expecting a childhood picture, maybe something to sign, but the moment his eyes landed on the image, everything around him disappeared. It was her, Lola Minda. She looked older, thinner, standing behind a counter at a small roadside cafe. She was wearing a plain apron and wiping a table. Her eyes were tired, her smile still kind but distant. The photo had been taken without her noticing. Manny felt a wave of heat rise to his face. Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice trembling. The woman replied gently, "My nephew took it during a road trip in the province. He didn't realize who she was. She just served him coffee. When he posted it online last week, I recognized her from your old interviews." Manny turned the photo over. There was no writing, no address, just a timestamp. 3 months ago. 3 months, and he had no idea she was still alive, let alone still working. He sat down. His heart raced. Shame and guilt poured over him like ice water. How had he missed this? How could he, with all his resources, all his staff, all his wealth, not know that the woman who once gave up her food for him was now scraping by in the background? He stood abruptly. "Get my team," he said to his assistant, "now." Within an hour, they were in a private room, scanning the photo for clues. Signage in the background, brand of coffee mug, even shadows for time of day estimation. "Is this real?" Manny asked aloud, more to himself than anyone. One of the junior staff hesitated, then said, "Sir, the cafe in the photo is in Bicol region. We think we found it. It's still open." "Still open? She's still working there?" Manny didn't respond. He looked again at the photo, this time closer. Her hands, her eyes, the slight arch in her back. How many meals had she served while he was winning world titles? How many nights had she walked home alone in silence? He slammed his fist on the table, not in anger at anyone but himself. "We leave at sunrise." "But sir," one assistant said, "you have an ESPN interview in the Dubai press." "Cancel everything." Silence. He stood slowly and held the photo up to his chest. "She didn't cancel her life when I needed her. I won't hesitate now." And just like that, the plan was set. Manny didn't want security. He didn't want press. He wanted to walk in and see her with his own eyes, unfiltered, unrehearsed. The next morning, he boarded a small plane to the province. From there, they drove along winding roads through towns and rice fields until they reached the coastal village. It was quiet, simple, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names and stories. The cafe was smaller than he expected. 2 plastic tables, a tin roof, 1 electric fan buzzing in the corner. But there she was, behind the counter, wearing the same apron from the photo, her hair tied back, her movements slow but precise. She didn't see him yet. She was pouring coffee into a chipped cup, offering a tired smile to a regular customer. He froze at the doorway. His team stood back, no cameras, no spotlight. Just him. He stepped in. The bell above the door rang. She turned, squinting against the light. And then, she stopped moving. She tilted her head slightly, as if her heart recognized something before her eyes could. He took off his cap. "Lola," he said, voice trembling. Her lips parted, but no words came. Manny walked forward and gently took the cup from her hands, placing it on the counter. She reached up with shaking fingers, touching his cheek as if to make sure he was real. "You found me," she whispered. "I should have never lost you," he replied, voice cracking. And there, in a tiny roadside cafe, not in a stadium, not in a press room, but in the heart of simplicity, the greatest reunion of Manny Pacquiao's life took place. Not as a boxer, not as a senator, just as a boy returning to his roots. Would you drop everything to find the person who once saved your life? Stay with us. What happens next might bring you to tears. The plane landed just before dawn. No entourage, no media, just a small rented car waiting on the side of the quiet provincial runway. Manny Pacquiao stepped off wearing a baseball cap, hoodie, and sunglasses. Not the usual flashy sunglasses he wore in Vegas, just plain, functional, and low profile. His team had learned. He didn't want fanfare. This journey was private. The roads were narrow and dusty. Children played near rice fields. Farmers rode bicycles past coconut trees. As the car moved farther from the city, Manny grew silent. He kept the photograph of Lola Minda in his pocket, fingers tracing its edges like it was a prayer. He hadn't slept. How could he? Every memory of her came back louder than the last. He remembered her voice calling him in from the streets. Her scolding him for fighting, then cleaning his wounds anyway. Her soft humming when they had no food, pretending everything was okay. He thought he'd outgrown those days. Until now, when the weight of forgetting her crushed him harder than any punch he'd ever taken. 3 hours later, the driver pointed ahead. There, he said, that's the cafe. Manny leaned forward. Tiny tin-roofed shop, cracked signage, 2 plastic chairs out front. He blinked, and there she was. Lola Minda, 85 years old. Still working. She was sweeping the porch with a small broom, her hands trembling slightly from age, but steady in rhythm. Her back was slightly hunched, her legs thin, but her presence, it was the same. Kind, quiet, but strong. Manny's breath caught in his throat. Wait here, he told the driver. But he didn't step out. Instead, he watched. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. She helped a young man with a broken sandal, tying it with a rubber band. She gave a toddler a leftover pandesal. She laughed with an old tricycle driver. And all the while, she didn't know. She didn't know the boy she once saved was watching, crying behind a dark window, too ashamed to face her just yet. Tears streamed down his face. Not because she looked broken, but because she looked whole. Without ever asking him for anything, he finally stepped out of the car. Slowly, carefully. The street was quiet. Only the sound of birds and the light scrape of her broom on concrete. She looked up when she heard the footsteps. Squinted. Manny pulled down his hoodie. And for a moment, everything froze. She held the broom midair. Her hand trembled. Very clever, Manny, she said, unsure, barely a whisper. He couldn't speak. He dropped to his knees in front of her. I'm sorry, he choked, voice breaking. I should have found you sooner. I should have brought you home. She didn't speak. She simply reached down and touched his shoulder. He looked up at her, face wet with tears. Why didn't you ask for help? He smiled, the same soft smile she had given him as a child. You gave me enough, Anak, she said. I was never alone. He shook his head. I left you behind. No, she replied, gently helping him up. You flew. That's what you were meant to do. I watched every fight. I prayed for every punch. You never left me. Not really. He hugged her tightly, like he did when he was 10 years old, crying after a street fight. And in that embrace, time dissolved. The cafe, the street, the years between them, all vanished. Just a boy and the woman who raised him. When they pulled apart, she tried to straighten her apron. I still work here. The customers... Not anymore, Manny interrupted. Come home with me. Let me take care of you now. She hesitated, then smiled again. If you make me eat vegetables, I'll leave. They both laughed through their tears. He helped her pack her few belongings, a rosary, a photo of his first trophy, and a Bible missing its cover. The next day, she left the cafe behind. That afternoon, a post went viral. A picture of Manny Pacquiao carrying an elderly woman into a luxury van, both of them smiling like nothing else in the world mattered. And beneath it, a caption. She gave him everything when he had nothing. Now he gives her everything, and more. The car pulled into a gated residence in Manila. Quiet, clean, nestled away from the city's chaos. Manny stepped out first and opened the door for her. "Lola," he said gently, "this is your new home." Lola Minda blinked at the house, wide steps, flowering bushes, the sound of birds instead of jeepneys. It wasn't a mansion, but it was peaceful, safe, built for comfort, not show. She hesitated before stepping out. "This is too much," she whispered. "No," Manny replied. "This is too late, and I'm just making up for lost time." Inside, her room smelled of fresh linen and wood polish. A nurse stood waiting quietly, not to intrude, but to serve. Everything had been prepared: soft mattress, warm lights, her favorite old radio station playing faintly. She looked around, eyes wet. "I don't need a palace." "You don't," Manny agreed, kneeling beside her. "You just deserve better than a plastic chair in a roadside cafe." That night they had dinner together. She told him old stories, he showed her new ones. Photos of his kids, the foundation he had built, how her values had shaped every choice he made. But by the next morning, the world had caught up. A single tweet had gone viral. Manny Pacquiao finds his former nanny still working at 85, brings her home, no cameras, no press, just pure love. Then came the hashtags. Lola Minda, real hero. Kindness still matters. News outlets picked it up within hours. Boxing champion reunites with Nanny after 30 years. The woman who fed a future legend finally gets her flowers. Pacquiao's greatest victory isn't in the ring, it's in a quiet act of gratitude. Social media flooded with love. Thousands of messages poured in. "Cried watching this. My grandma raised me. I'm calling her now." We need more stories like this in the world. Thank you, Manny, for reminding us where we come from matters. People began sharing their own Lola stories about nannies, grandparents, aunts who sacrificed everything without asking for recognition. And yet, in the middle of all this noise, Lola Minda stayed quiet. She sat on a wooden bench in the garden, sipping salarat, eyes closed, face lifted toward the sun. Manny sat beside her. She looked at him and said, "You didn't need to do all this. You already won the world. I don't want to be a burden." He turned toward her, visibly emotional. "You're not a burden," he said, voice steady. "You're the foundation." She smiled softly, but he saw it, a hint of guilt in her eyes, that feeling of being too old, too late, too unimportant. That night, Manny called a press conference. Not to promote a fight, not to announce a product, to make a promise. He stepped onto the stage in front of reporters and flashing cameras and said, "There are millions of Lolas in the world. Forgotten, unheard, unseen. I found mine, but some are still waiting. So today, I'm launching the Lola Minda Foundation to provide healthcare, housing, and dignity for elderly caretakers across the Philippines. Not out of charity, but out of debt." The room fell silent. He paused, then added, "They raised us. We owe them more than applause. We owe them peace." The next morning, the foundation's website crashed from too many visitors. Donations flooded in from around the world, small amounts, big amounts, letters of love. One message simply read, "My Lola sold vegetables so I could finish school. I'm paying it forward in her name." That weekend, Manny walked into Lola Minda's room holding a small box. "Open it," he said. Inside was a gold necklace, not flashy, just elegant, with a small engraving. Zanak Nig Puzo's Child of the Heart. She touched it with trembling fingers. He fastened it gently around her neck, and for the first time in years, she cried. Not from exhaustion, not from hunger, but from being seen. If you believe in repaying kindness, share this video. Let's remind the world that loyalty still matters, because behind every success story is someone who sacrificed in silence. 2 years later, the sun was setting over Manila Bay, casting golden streaks across the water. At the cultural center of the Philippines, a quiet crowd gathered. Not for a concert or a fight, but for a tribute. The stage was simple. No flashing lights, no smoke machines. Just a single rocking chair and a necklace hanging from its armrest. Manny Pacquiao stepped up to the microphone, older now, slower, but with the same fire in his eyes. The crowd hushed. "I've been celebrated for throwing punches," he said. But the woman who taught me how to take life's punches never asked for applause. Behind him, a screen lit up with black and white photos. Lola Minda, young and strong, holding baby Manny, feeding him rice and sardines from her own plate, clapping alone in front of a small TV as he won his first belt. She had passed quietly just months earlier, in her sleep, wrapped in the same blanket she used to cover Manny when he was a boy. There were no last-minute hospital visits, no ICU machines. Just peace. But her legacy was only just beginning. Manny continued, "Because of Lola Minda, 500 former nannies now live in comfort through the foundation she inspired. Children have scholarship, clinics have been built, lives have been saved." He paused, looking out into the crowd. "Kindness never dies," he said. "It just multiplies." And in that moment, the audience rose in silent tribute. One by one, people in the crowd placed roses at the edge of the stage. Some whispered prayers. Others wiped tears. No one clapped. It didn't feel right. Instead, they stood quietly honoring, not just Lola Minda, but every forgotten elder who once shaped a child's future and never asked for credit. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll. Tag someone who raised you. Share it with someone who sacrificed in silence. And subscribe, not just for more stories, but to be part of a movement. Because in a noisy world, we need to keep kindness loud.